All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm glad that you chose to come here and not to go to GDC because that's expensive, pain in the butt to get to, though they do have better Mexican food. So, in the meantime, I'm Gregory Pellechi, and today we're going to talk about narrative design and production. And we're going to run a small workshop about how to integrate everyone together into telling stories to get them all working towards the same goal. So the agenda for today is, of course, this introduction. We'll do a small warm-up game, and then we'll demonstrate what the goal is of the workshop. At which point we will then split into teams. We'll do teams of approximately 5 people, and Suvi and myself will go between the teams as needed. And then after that, we'll return, share our work, and from that, do another session after we've come to grips with what we did the first time. And then we will end with a follow-up and Q&A. But yeah, before we do that, any questions about today's agenda? Suvi, you'll have to watch the chat. I won't be able to.
No
All
question
right.
from my side either.
All right, great. So, oops. I am a senior narrative designer at Action Squad Games, and I've been working in games for 6 or so years and writing for 20 plus. Yeah, I've worked in journalism, humanitarian aid, and as a communications consultant, and now games. So I've done a lot of different types of storytelling, and games is honestly the most fun, which is why I'm always happy to talk about both games and storytelling. Yeah. If you have questions about me later or my work, well, check either my website or ask me at a later time. So this workshop came from a number of questions that the LGIN community wanted answers to. Borb, who isn't here, asked about like environmental and other nonverbal storytelling. There's even the question why every game needs a narrative. One of the things we're going to touch on is estimating production costs, and then tips and tricks for narrative and multiplayer games, as well as that ever effervescent trending and ephemeral idea of emergent narrative. Like how do we add that? And I can't guarantee we'll actually touch on any of this. Like these are all broad topics, and they're more something for that often comes in like emergent narrative, or why every game needs a narrative. That tends more towards questions academia, or at least articles in the press will like to get into. We hopefully will answer some of them in what we're doing today. And so what we're doing today is focusing on story hooks and how we can use story hooks to connect to all disciplines. So a great story hook, okay, you're wondering, what is a story hook? There's a nice definition here on the presentation about, what it is. But my prime example to always go to is the words "the Clone Wars." In Star Wars: A New Hope, Obi-Wan says, Anakin Skywalker fought in the Clone Wars. We have no description at that point. And this is in the original movie, before the prequels come out where we saw them. But at that point, we had 3 words that said a lot, but told us very little. And it got us wondering. we as the audience were immediately asking questions about what it was, trying to guess what happened and why. And that is a story hook. Now, in that case, that's, the creation of a proper noun, the Clone Wars, everything's capitalized. But not all story hooks have to be that way. That some things in games can be, like the idea in what is it, Fallout 3 or Fallout 4, you find a skeleton sitting on a toilet. It's like, okay, a nuclear bomb hit here and this person died on the toilet. It's a story hook. You don't know who they are, so you may have questions about it, which leads you to rummaging through their house, hoping that maybe you will find something about them. So all that said, we are going to look into the story hooks. I know we have some other storytellers here today, so would any of you like to offer a explanation or an example of what a story hook is?
Usually, kind of like from my experience, it was that thing that you tend to include at the end of the segment, the TV segment, to bring people back later, or at the end of and it should be this level of importance. If it's at the end of the week, so from Friday to Monday, it should be this important. So somehow it's something to bring people back. So for example, when you were telling about presenting information to develop later, I was thinking, I don't know if this is the term in English, but seeding, to planting seeds of information to later explore and develop.
Yeah, that's a great term. That's one that is often used. Yeah, you are seeding information, you are planting ideas. Yeah. Does anyone else have examples?
Would you say that Chekhov's gun is a story hook in a way?
Yes, definitely. For those who don't know of this idea, Chekhov's gun is an idea that Chekhov put forward, that if you show a gun on the wall in the first act, then the gun has to go off in the second or the third act. So that by showing something, it has to be used in some way.
I like to think of a story hook as a literal hook that gets into you, that gets you hooked, and then it starts reeling you in, and you go, I want to find out more.
Do you have an example of one from a piece of media that does that for you?
I think it would have to be something where very little is revealed at first, but what is revealed is like the tip of an iceberg that shows there's something more to discover if you keep following this thread. Don't have an example on the top of my mind.
I do have one example of
Please.
that. There is a webtoon called Tower of God that has been written for like, I don't know, 5 years more now. And in the beginning, there are already all of the terms present that are still being used in the very late game. But when you land in the webtoon, the same as the main character, who also just comes into that environment, they don't really tell anything to you, but you are very curious because like everyone sort of knows what they are, but you don't. And then bit by bit, all of them get sort of revealed with time, especially when some character's name gets thrown around, which you haven't met yet. And then you might have some sort of thoughts about who this character is based on the rumors or whatever, and then you meet the actual character and you see what happens then. That kind of stuff, I feel like, is pretty much like the story hooks.
I came up with an example, the famous Dungeons & Dragons campaign Curse of Strahd. The hook is right there in the name.
Yeah. The literal titles of things can be everything that gets you into something. All right, so we're going to move on to a game. And to get us all warmed up, you're all going to have to turn your microphones on for this, because I'm going to be calling on all of you. And so we're going to play the alphabet game, courtesy of Aki here. And Aki, please tell me if I'm getting the instructions wrong on this. So when I call your name, you have to, we are going to come up with a word. And that word is going to be based on the current letter of the alphabet that we're on. So we're going to start with A, and whatever word you can come up with, A. And it doesn't have to be in English. If it's easier for you to come up with a word in another language, please do so. You just have to be comfortable. The idea is solely just come up with something quickly. Doesn't have to be a serious word. It can be silly. And once we can come up with no more A's, we'll move on to B's and then C's.
The idea is to reach the end, not to come up with as many words as possible.
There you go. All right. So since well, I'm at the top of my list, I will call us out. So the first with A is Aardvark. Suvi. I know it's a little silly thing, but you know, when we're working together, we need to, well, we need a way of breaking the ice. We need a way of putting our egos aside, as we were talking about before we began this workshop. So today, as I said, you are going to be creating story hooks. And that means that in teams, you're going to be using a super cool world Bible for the super cool game that I have come up with alongside Aki. And you will, each team will be given a location. And for that location, you're going to have to determine what is there and why. And in doing so, you're going to have to create the asset list for the narrative production plan. So if I switch to this, all right, our narrative production plan will look something like this. This is a simple spreadsheet similar to what I and my team use at Action Squad, where we put in everything that we require for storytelling. And because it's a visual medium, you know, the artists, the level designers, the others are going to have to be creating certain things. And of course, we have more constraints given you know, the direction of the game. But for the purposes today, you don't have to worry about a lot of that. We will get to some of those constraints in the super cool game trademark World Bible. Instead, what you are going to be doing is largely filling in this production plan. And in it, you're going to be, you know, naming those assets that you need. You're going to choose what type of thing they are. So are they a world object, an NPC, or an inventory item? Now, inventory items, they can be things that characters wear. They can be armor, weapons, other types of equipables. They don't have to be. They can be, you know, just the junk stuff that people pick up in a game. An NPC, doesn't have to be a character that someone can talk to. It can be an enemy that you fight, or just a character that goes about the world as you see sometimes. It could be a bird or whatever you want. And then a world object is anything that you need to be in the game. It can be, like in our case, we call props. These tend to be very specific things. They're not entirely level design items, but they're things placed in the world during level design for specific purposes. If you want it to be more environmental, so it's like a particular type of rock outcropping or a feature like a waterfall, you can specify that. That's up to you and your team to decide how you're using it. For our purposes, I've just gone very broad. You need, of course, to decide whether something is interactable beyond the basic mechanics, which we will provide. So there's yes and no. So a chest that you open is going to be an interactable, whereas the terrain is not. Then, of course, you have the location description. There are a number of locations which I will provide you for this, and you will get to see them shortly. But as you build out your location, you may have more specifics. So you will need to specify where within it something is. And then you have associated game systems. So what is being interacted with here? And again, because we're just talking on a high level, we don't need to go into specifics to the degree that, we're using, Houdini to put some terrain into the environment. No, keep it general, keep it light. Your focus is not on which systems are actually in play, but remembering that you need to account for these things when you are deciding what happens from a narrative standpoint. So for example, like this, I have this spit basin, and there's the basic interaction and combat. So this spit basin could have some effect in combat, whether it gets hit or destroyed, and then affects either the player character or the enemies. Then if because of those interactions, you of course need to think through the states of all these things so that other departments know what needs to happen. So in this case, if there is if this can be interacted with in combat, you need it to be whole, it needs to be damaged, and then it needs destroyed, so that you show the change in what's occurring in the game. And then some of that can be done through animations and visual effects. So you need to state how you want those. And again, simple, just provide the basic idea, because in this case, you all are acting as narrative designers. You're not an artist in this case. You're not a level designer. You're not a programmer. They, as their specialties, get to decide how it works and what is possible. And they may come back to you and say no, in which case you adjust. And again, we can't forget sound effects and music, because they are vital to this medium. But most important of all, what you're doing here today is providing this explanation for the team member. This is where you are creating story hooks. So for example, here, in this spit basin, I have written the Tingu masticate on something found in the crash ship and spit it out. And that's associated with the spit basins. So, we also have, like another example is an escape pod, which is located in the desert. And it has no associated games systems or states or animations or effects at this time, simply because it's a sub-location within the location I was working on. So I have simply provided a story hook explaining what it is. And in this case, it's an escape pod that has been dragged out into the desert and appears to have a sail atop of it. That's it. Nothing more. So before we move on, any questions? No? All right. So the super cool game World Bible. You will get all this information shared with you. So we have 3 basic player mechanics that you are working with, and that is movement, combat, and interact. You don't have to specify, you don't need any more specificity than that. This is a standard 3D open world sci-fi shooter. So you can think of something like Borderlands or Destiny or what is it? Remnant of the Ashes or Ashes of the Remnant. I forget. Pick something, and it probably falls within this genre. And the idea with this is just to give you an idea of the world that you are working in. But again, you don't need any great detail. So, and that world is, an Earth-like world in a distant part of the galaxy that has 2 moons and 7 suns, and humanity has recently crashed here. Now, there are some specifics to humanity and what they can do, and these can help you set up what you're doing if you so need it. In addition to this, we have 2 alien factions, 2 enemy factions to make it simple. All right, so we have the Dingu, which are, well, weird marsupials, and then we have the Dewano, which are scaled canines. Yeah. Any questions about them?
How did you create the images?
What did we use, Aki? This was pulled together quickly using.
I think the Wano image was from Dream.ai.
And I think was it Stable Diffusion? I think I used Stable Diffusion for the Tingu. Yeah. Yeah.
They're very funny. I was just asking because they're very funny.
The prompt for the Dewano was actually originally shelled, I think shelled amphibians or something like that. Then it gave me an armored dog, and I thought, hey, that's cool. Let's make them scaled canines.
Yeah. And I think I literally went with a 4-armed bipedal marsupial as my prompt, and that's what I got for the Tingu. So there you have it. Yeah, that is all I am giving you for the world building. I'm being one of those game directors who knows what he wants, but just isn't going to tell you what that is. You have to figure it out. All right. So I am going to share a different screen now. All right. So you will get to work in Miro as well with your team. And in the in Miro, you will find a frame for each team, and there we have a number of locations. So everything I was working on was based here in this desert that has a crashed ship in it. One of the teams will be in a swamp with an extraction platform, another will be in the tunnels with a cryo chamber, and a third will be in a forest with a village. if we're going to 3 teams. If it's just 2, well, then we'll deal with it. So your task, which you don't get to decide whether or not you accept it, is going to be to decide what is in a single location. And these are all the details you have to work from. And you need to create story hooks so that others coming along later, be they writers or artists or the sound designers, can decide what they want. What we're not going to worry about is some of the more complicated, more high level narrative decisions, like are we doing cinematics? Are we going to have branching dialogue, etc.? That's not for today. Those all have their repercussions, but those aren't necessary to have for this workshop. So before we begin, any questions?
So what are the deliverables?
The deliverables are, hold on, let me switch back to the other screen. You will have approximately, let's say, 20 minutes with your team to decide what is at the location and then fill out the narrative production plan. So you have to decide what is found, say, in that swamp that has an extraction platform. So you have to decide, what does an extraction platform mean? What is it extracting? What type of swamp is there? You know, what sorts of things are you seeing there? And how can you build a world for this game that offers possibility and isn't closing things off?
How many objects approximately?
As many as you can, Anton. Remember, we're not scoping down yet.
Yeah, but we can go like super wide and make 100 super flat objects, or we can go super deep and create 3 super nice objects.
Anton, this is a workshop. You get to decide and
Yes,
see
but
what
you
works.
as a production manager, you need to give us.
Well, I mean, he did say it has to have a story hook. So if you put like 100 flat objects in it, I'm not sure how much of a story hook they will have.
True.
I think it's on the team to decide what is actually useful.
Yeah, it's not for me. Remember, I'm the game director providing you absolutely no direction. Just go work, my minions. And with that, Suvi, send the teams to their rooms.
Yes, how many rooms do we want? Considering this now 13.
Let's just split it into 2.
Was included. Yes, okay. And we'll create your rooms.
All right.
Oh.
So
Bye-bye. You should get an invitation to the
I
rooms
did.
now.
here is the World Bible for you. So make use of them. And you, I believe Suvi will share the mirror board with you.
Oh yeah. Just
And on that, this is team 1, so you have a frame that you can go to. And team 1, you are to work on the swamp. Game Bible. And
a mirror board.
here is the, Suvi gave you the mirror board. You are team 2, by the way. And here is the production plan. So remember, you have the tabs at the bottom of the spreadsheet that you can go to your page specifically, and you all should have editing rights. Does anyone have any questions before I switch away?
What's our location? Is it immediately understandable from? Okay, I see. So we have 3 locations, right?
Yes, but for this, you are going to focus on the tunnels and the cryo chamber team 2. All right.
Okay. So we focused, it means that we can kind of create other objects, but not really.
You can be thinking about it, but we will, the other team has a different location. And once we return to share what you've done and move on to the next section, then you will get to do more. So for the moment, just focus on one location.
All right.
Yeah, and if you need to, you have full access to Miro and everything you can do, so you can edit your frame as you so desire.
Sounds good. Also, okay, one more question. I think I should have asked it in the big group, but anyways. So what's the, let's say, the biggest emotion? What is the kind of main idea of the game?
That's for you,
For us.
all to decide.
Okay.
Yeah, I trust you, Anton. You have good ideas. So do the rest of you. You'll do it. All right. I'll check back in a few.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
So it
Yeah.
would be weird for them to set up anything like
And they follow,
long-term.
if they follow the phases of the moon, then we probably maybe should have a couple of the moons on the sky. I don't know. If we want like are they like lemmings and they like comet like this huge wave of them, or
I mean, there's 7 moons, so it's interesting. to
maybe
follow them.
there's like a historical event where all the moons for some reason are exactly aligned and it makes the tingles go crazy.
Or it could be also that the Devanos have set up this sort of an extraction platform there, and it's disturbing the life that's currently there.
Or it's the humans who actually put up the extraction pod. They recently arrived, they found this thing, they found that something could be extracted from it, and they set up like an extraction, whatever it is there, and now it's disturbing the life that's there.
So have the humans been there before us, before this ship?
No, it just recently crashed. So
Okay. So we need to figure out.
according to the Bible.
I mean, are we the humans, I guess?
I'm assuming. Yeah. It's a very metaphorical questions. Are we the human?
Wait. So Zoom is screwing the focus. Okay, so I'll create these. And here we go with assumptions. Sticky note. Or how we call them? Assumptions or like central, I don't know.
Let's go with like tone and mood.
Yes. Tone and mood.
All of the hooks that we design should somehow
Yes.
fit
Feed this.
in with the themes of survival horror and exploration of a mystery.
Exploration of a mystery. Okay. Anything else? What should we?
I think that's a pretty good starting point already.
Yeah. Okay.
So, well, both of those elements combined, I would say that we don't actually have cryo chambers where we could see inside. They're fogged up.
Yeah.
Contain anything.
Yeah, but it's a single cryo chamber. So, yes. Okay.
A cryochamber, yes, but it has many cryopods.
Yeah.
Oh yes, you're right. Okay. Then we should work with that, yes. So let's put some. Who is taking this anonymous 9 cat? Yes, this is good. Fogged up cryopods. Interactable, I would say. Okay, what are the actions that we have? Movement, combat, interact. So should they explode?
I'm just picturing some swamp monsters as well, like
Yeah, it's like maybe the swamp is a home to these kind of like parasites or whatever. Oof. And they killed that alien, and then now they just are using that as a home. So if you interact with the body, that stuff comes out and tries to get you as well to be their new home. It's getting kind of.
I'll put down for sound effects, smooshy sounds and slithery fighting sounds. I don't know.
Can I ask, is the alien a life form different than the Tingu or the Dawana or the humans?
Yes.
Okay, so you've introduced a fourth group.
Yes, there was
But in
a
this
question.
case-
There was a
Yeah.
question about, is this a shooter? And if it's a shooter, then we have to have like something to shoot.
Essentially, it is an NPC, you could say.
Okay, so you just don't want to shoot
it's not-
four-armed marsupials.
We haven't really introduced those yet into this scenario.
Okay.
But
That's what-
it's mostly the resident of this specific swamp. So like,
Yeah, exactly. We could also have a swamp tingle.
So brainstorming for more objects.
I think we need to. We don't have a quest yet. We just have a location. So maybe in order to interact with the control panel, maybe we need some kind of access key that can be found somewhere else.
Yeah, sounds good. Crypto key.
well, it's kind of like the idea that was already in the Orwell Animal Farm as well. Some animals are more equal than the others.
yeah, it was basically kind of looking at that.
Yeah, could be that.
If they only count that, maybe they don't consider Tingus as like sentient beings, something.
Yeah, could be.
Based on their maybe they're like savages or whatever. Based on their interactions with them.
Also need to figure out this sinkhole.
I feel like that's more of a it's the associated mechanics, it's the movement thing for the movement. So because it's a swamp, it has sinkholes. So if you move around the swamp, you run the danger of either being slowed down or, in general, being stuck in a sinkhole, which makes it harder for you to shoot the enemies.
All right. Is everyone here? No, I only see team 2. Where's team 1? Ah, here they come.
They kept chatting for as long as they could, so hey. Everybody's back now, I think.
All right, how's everyone feeling about that first task? Team 1, you want to tell me how you're doing?
I think it was sort of hard to get going with writing stuff down. I think we were more just discussing in the beginning, like we took the task as more like this sort of a debate of whatever has happened there first to kind of figure out our bearings, and then started to put stuff down and found maybe that we were short of time in the end, so we just like rushed the ideas down on the paper in the end.
Yeah, we basically spent a lot of time trying to align on what we wanted to for the scene to be, and also clearing up any like our understanding of the Bible, I guess.
All right. And what about you, Team 2?
Pretty good. In terms of, we I think avoided the trap of discussing too long of what actually happened there. We just decided on the mood first, kind of what exactly the emotions, let's say, or things that we want to players to experience, and then we just went from there with some random brainstorming on different elements. And I think it turned out pretty good. Mostly thanks to Aki's experience in D&D, I guess. So he was pretty good at spinning the tale. He's as for those who don't know, he's basically a dungeon master with a huge experience. So it's a talent that you can and kind of, yeah, you can, let's say, skill up. So Aki is very good at that. And yeah, otherwise, I think it was an interesting setup. So yeah, I like the task.
Cool. All right, Team 1, why don't you share with us what your location was and what story you're trying to tell there?
I can try to summarize. But yeah, so I guess the way we went about it is, so we had Swamp with an extraction platform. And we were trying to kind of see who could be living in the swamp, looking at the Bible and seeing what we can come up with. So we had the extraction platform itself that basically was trying to get some biofuel out of the swamp, and it's operated by Dovanas. But the item itself was this sort of operation instruction, I think. Yeah,
a booklet.
Yeah, a booklet that the player can't actually read because it's in the one language that they don't know, but it's there. And you can pick it up, and then maybe later something will come up, will clear up. Then we had this this dead alien form or corpse that is related to the combat mechanics, because there's a parasite in the corpse that if you interact with the corpse will jump out and try to get you as well. And then we had the sinkholes in the swamp itself that affect movement, and basically are there to get the player to actually feel that it is a swamp. Yeah, there's nothing much more to those. But then we went on a long tangent about the Tingus and their culture, and we came up with this thing that they might hold some rituals at certain times, but they're not there at the moment. However, there is a Tingu altar there that did we here it's not interactable, yeah. That the player may find and ask themselves a question of like what the hell is going on here. We also talked that maybe it could be interactable and you might accidentally perform the ritual, but in the wrong way, which would maybe spawn some monsters. That was one such consideration. That's kind of all we had the time to do.
Okay. And what about you, Team 2? Tell us your story and of your location.
So the basic idea is that these tunnels are winding, so you kind of come in and you definitely you see the cryo chamber somewhere. Also nearby, you can kind of spot a, let's say, tunnel junction camp. So some sort of residence, almost abandoned by the Wano, but in the middle of the camp there is one of the cryopods which is kind of broken out of the cryo chamber. One of the cryopods is there and it's unpowered. It's in the middle of the camp, and nearby you see the one. Well, maybe you not see, but you hear that there is a Devano shaman that needs help kind of powering the cryopod. So this creates a quest for basically traversing the tunnels to find the big lever, which is as usual in games, weird contraption that sticks somewhere out of the blue and powers on everything that needs to be powered on. So during this trip to Big Lever, you find broken or opened cryopods for some suspension. Kind of you can try to glimpse what's inside and try to understand what was there, why they're broken, actually how they made it out of the cryo chamber here. So once you flip the switch and power this single cryopod that is sitting inside the Vana village, inside the tunnel junction camp, the shaman gives you control panel access key, which gives you access basically to not only the cryo chamber itself, but to each of the control panels of it. And there, probably some action scene is happening where you need to shoot lots of enemies, and while you shoot them, you can by accident also explode the cryopods, which they make loud noises, weird sounds of escaping gas. Oh yes, if you are careful and you kind of can avoid exploding them, it's also an option. And then you can open them using cryopod control panels. So the plot twist is that if they exploded and opened, they seem empty, but in fact there is an alien life form in the form of gas inside. So you can see it, but it's somehow, I'm not yet sure is it dead or alive when you open them, but the point is that they seem empty, but in fact they're not. That would be it.
Okay, great. Team 1, how do you feel about what Team 2 created? Any immediate thoughts about what they've put in their sheet?
Well, there's definitely like a lot of variation. Oh, well, not a lot, but there's quite a bit of variation, like in the mechanics, for example. So a little bit more in there.
But I can immediately see how some of these cryopod, if there was a gas entity there, could be linked to our side as well. If the Devanos were extracting the gas, they were basically trying to find these alien life forms from there. It could also be what's killed that extra alien kind of that we introduced. So there's a reason why they want to protect them, why they want to keep them in that state. So kind of can see like the easiness to tie it all in somehow as well.
All right. And team 2, how did you feel about what team 1 did?
Yeah, I can also agree that there are good parallels between the narrative. So with some kind of hammer and saw, they can be all clapped together. Like we can remove an element, add an element, and then kind of basically make it all work if it's needed. So if we see the kind of when we are combined together, and if we like stuff from each other, we can just don't choose one or another or kind of combine them. Yeah, so I think it's a pretty good framework, the narrative production plan. I mean, so it allows for this sort of independent work of two teams, and then you can come together and kind of create some sort of combination of these two.
All right. Well, Anton, you've actually allowed me to segue into our next task. We're not going back to breakout rooms because of we've lost some people over the course of the workshop. Instead, we're all going to stay here. And so there's now a new tab on the sheets. So collectively, you all now need to decide which of the elements from both the you can use anything in the example tab, as well as from the two teams that you created, which of those would you pick to create a unified game between these 3 locations, trying to, you share resources, share mechanics, interactions, etc., so that things are there. And if you want to, you are also allowed to add new things here, but before you add new items, new objects, etc., if you're wanting to add new states or animations, sound effects, etc., you can do so on top of what's already there, but bold it or somehow, or change the color of that text so that we all can see clearly something's been added within that column. So for example, if I take like the force field key from the example and put it there, then, if I'm going to add a drop animation to it, then I've bolded that, or you can't even really see that. Bold does not work that well, but okay, we will make it red, or you can pick a color. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so now, yeah, you as 2 teams are 1 and have to bring this game together. And you're scoping down this project. So I will give you 20 minutes for this. Any questions?
And the deliverable again is just a list of objects in the
Yes.
production plan.
Yeah, but you're combining from the 3 sheets. You don't have to have everything. You need to decide what you want and how it's relevant. You're trying to do as few things as possible in this case. Things that maybe thematically fit across all 3 of these locations, or mechanically they're useful in these locations. And you can argue or discuss about the validity, like how that fits in with that location.
Well, all right.
Good luck.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I don't want to hog the microphone, but just to hog the microphone, should we set down on the tone and mood? So do you have, I mean, I think what you invented is actually more or less fits also the survival horror mystery exploration narrative, right?
I would say, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say actually for this, we might want to see if there are any things that are clearly contradicting each other, and then see if we want to go into a certain direction. That might be a good start.
Also, I think the survival horrors, it's a great addition, but it's not one of the genres. So that is something maybe we want to like kind of reconsider again, if that's something we want to go with for now. And how relevant or how important it is to keep it as close to the genre that's given already.
Yeah, which is sci-fi shooter, I suppose, and open world 3D.
Yeah, but it's just a flavor. It's not like we are going to go all Resident Evil. It's more like,
So if I were to do that, there's a lot of stuff going on. So we're trying to scope down and just go for the most important story hooks, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the sinkholes from our side kind of like bring the mood in, so they have their place as well, and they do serve a purpose in terms of the whole story if it involves this sort of gas and this sort of life forms or whatever that are there. But at the same time, I'm thinking like, is the alien life forms, are those even so necessary overall? Whereas right now, like in the second team, it's more about the Devano culture and their side of it, and there's a little bit of the Tingus in ours. I'm thinking, would it maybe make more sense that it's like they are in a war against each other in a way, and we have to kind of pick a faction that we support, and we'll find out both sides of the story in some way or another. But introducing another element might, like another alien form, might actually kind of distract from that.
So you're saying that maybe we should get rid of the alien form completely?
That's just a thought. I don't know what
I mean, I know that sounds good to me, at least. I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's drop all that you have except for alien here and see how it goes.
Is there only one of the operating booklets, like only one exists and it happens to be in the swamp area?
It is there because there's the extraction platform, so it's
Right.
tied to the platform basically.
Oh, okay.
So you would think if there was some other platforms, they might also have them, but yeah, so far we only have one.
Yeah, I was wondering if this is something that is lost and the Dewanos want it, and it's in the swamp area where the Tingus are. But yeah.
Yeah, but it's more situational, I guess, in this case. So if the Dewanos came back, they could find use for the platform and the instruction. But maybe something happened to the Tingus there specifically that led to the fact that the instruction booklet got left.
Got a good point in the chat saying, could it be the gas or the leaking fuel are poisonous to either Tingu or humans?
Yeah,
That is a good question. Could be poisonous to Tingus, and that's why they also abandoned the ritual site, for example.
Maybe they realize that it is poisonous and they're trying to stop the Devanos from actually extracting it and using it in a war against the Tingu.
yeah.
No biochemical weapons allowed.
They're storing it in their cryo chambers. That they have their pods full of it, and if you're actually fighting them there, you might actually end up releasing a bunch of it into the atmosphere or something like that. I don't know.
That does sound pretty interesting. Let's see.
Yeah. The question is kind of, since we have a deadline and task, should we keep, do we see anything really against, basically anything that kind of conflicts between what I brought now from team 2 and what you have from team 1? Are there any conflicting items in the main list?
Can you show the explanations to the team more in this? I'm looking at the screen only. I could probably read it myself, but
Well, I mean, there could be a conflict between the perhaps the Dovano shaman and the Tingu altar, but I don't know. It's not like we have to remove it, but it's gonna more like maybe bring some more to the story, I guess. But they're not like in direct conflict with each other.
Yeah, they're not, because basically both of them could have certain religions happening.
Yeah, and they should
the
be
same
pretty basic, I guess, since they are kind of, how you say,
If
makes sense. So what about the kind of narrative or like quest combining the locations? So should we do something about that, or we leave them like kind of not connected?
I feel like they're more existing in the same world, and they might be telling a larger story in general, like the one Nico suggested about the gas. But they might not be directly connected, like in a single quest, for example. At least that's
as an
that would be my
explorer
opinion.
or some sort in this planet or in this new world, you're kind of, you could be brought to see the point of view of both of these sides of the story, and then end up making some sort of a decision later on, who do you really support and what's important to you. But I wouldn't say that it has to be like limited right now or like locked in, that you have to actually pick a side and follow their story only. Could both easily make a compelling case.
This actually reminds me of the game based on the Avatar IP, where you could get a feel of both sides, and then there is a point in the story where you have to choose if you go together with the lieutenant, so you continue as a human, or your human body dies, so you continue as an avatar. This could be something similar.
Okay, did you understand what's actually extracted at the extraction platform?
I mean, according, if we were to go with Nico's theory, it could be the gas that the Duanos are also storing in the cryo chambers in your tunnels, right? And that would be the poisonous substance biochemical weapon against the Tingus.
Okay, that sounds,
for example.
So
that is what we came up with, yeah.
Should we maybe add in these 3 empty lines some sort of quest or narrative thingy for the swamp location, and then we'll have 2 more or less solid locations with a single quest line for each? What do you think? And kind of we can maybe tie them up, yes, by
Well,
this.
if we go with the idea that we want to kind of show both sides, I would imagine some sort of a quest from the Tingu side would make sense for the player to kind of retrieve the booklet for them, so that they can figure out how to stop that extraction platform from opening.
Yeah. I mean, Tingu were the ones using the platform, right?
No, the Vanos were.
Ah, okay. Yeah, then it makes sense. So on the swamp, somewhere the booklet is lost, and the player needs to find it and bring it back to whom? Who would be the representative of Tingu?
the extraction platform is there and they want to stop it somehow. So you're trying to find a way to do that. And for that, you end up getting the booklet that you bring back. Something like that,
Right.
maybe.
Okay, but just remind you that the booklet is in the language of the Dewanos. Is that?
Yeah,
is
but
it
maybe
kind-
Tingus know the language of the Dewanos. So
Oh,
you
if-
bring them
Oh,
back
so
and
they're
they
trying-
decipher
So
it.
you
Yeah.
think they're trying to hide it from them, so they can't operate the, well, you know,
Or
the
they
place.
want to read the booklet to see if they can stop the, like, disrupt the working
Right.
of it somehow. Because if you
Right.
understand the contraption, then you might be able to stop it.
So that's a very valuable item then. Yeah.
Just a small notion I noticed. Maybe the Devano shaman could be actually a Devano priest or something, or kind of feels like shaman is more like a primitive culture.
Dewano office manager. He's in the HR.
Devano chief of operations.
Yeah, COO. Sounds good. No, but in fact, it looks like this planet is in shambles because like it has only 2 locations.
Yeah, and because of we've extracted the resources too much because of bad management.
Yes, and that's why we cannot make them too smart. That's my point. If they have a brew chief that is true in fuel on one end, it couldn't be an Oxford professor on the other one, right? Oh yeah, but priest and shaman, if you feel like it will add some sort of narrative, sure, go ahead. You can edit it. So okay, brew chief gives a quest. Brew chief is located at the crashed ship, so we can steal something else from the examples to make the plan more interesting.
I think that
Yeah.
needs to be. It's now Devano chief of operations there, but
Yeah.
Devano should be the Devano priest. Should be changed into a Devano chief of operations.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
And that was the Tingu brew chief.
yes, the Tingu brew chief. Yes, you're right.
But
I'm trying to see if it's a Spitz Basin the chief or whatever, then probably needs Spitz Basins to exist.
To be honest, I don't understand what it is.
Me neither, but if someone is in charge of something, you probably need that something to exist in the story.
all
So we
right.
might as well bring it.
We're gonna call it there, and to give you the reference, the Spit Basin, like that was drawing from kava, which is a traditional brew found in the Pacific Islands, and originally it was made by chewing on kava root and spitting it out. And then it would ferment. These days, it doesn't tend to get made that way, but it's yeah, it's meant. I don't think it has a hallucinogenic effect, but it's sort of meant to have a calming one. So yeah, it's just drawing on a bit of real world to create something interesting.
Okay,
Yeah. So
we will take that.
yeah, go down a wiki rabbit hole sometime about kava. It's quite interesting. But all right, so you've brought this all together and you've created a unified project. Now I would like you all to put on your real life job hats. So I'm gonna go call out your name, and I'd like to know what your background is. Like, are you an artist, animator, programmer? You know, just give us the basics. We don't need your full CV. All right. So I'll call out your name, and you tell me what you do in games. So Nico.
I'm the lead writer for Finnish Army Simulator.
All right. Area.
I do graphic design.
Anton.
Developer and product/project management.
All right. Daria.
yes. So I guess concept artist, but I'm also currently doing creative direction in a sense, so kind of everything.
Mina.
I'm a graphic designer, not actually in games, but would like to be one day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Suvi.
Oh no, incubation manager.
Michelle.
I'm creative director at Joint Play Games.
All right. Nick. No. Jose.
Hello, I'm sorry I'm a bit late. I just arrived in Latin America, but I'm a VR developer, a photographer, and a producer.
All right.
Right now, I'm an Arcada student for video games.
Cool. Thank you. Juha. No. All right. Cynthia.
I'm currently not in the industry, but I'm doing content acquisitions in broadcasting.
Okay. Did I miss anyone? No. All right. So back in your real job, now that you're no longer narrative designers, what information do you feel like is missing from this for you to be able to work with it? Looking at the tab all on that spreadsheet.
For me, more or less everything is missing so far.
Okay, as a programmer, you need more.
Not only, I mean, even as a product manager. So, I mean, not even, but starting with that. So basically, yes, we have a bunch of interesting things that are around there. We know that they can we know what we can do with them, but how exactly we do this? What is an interaction for speed basins? It should be all written down and designed. What is a sinkhole movement? So yeah, basically everything. So this is just a skeleton and not a good one at that, which is expected because we spent like 40 minutes on it. So yeah, but yeah, sorry to be I would say to rain on the parade, but yes, this is and of course when we start doing this, when we start designing things around that, so we will cut a lot of things out, I guess like 2/3 of it, and then it would be something that can be moved forward.
All right. Anyone else thoughts on what's missing?
Yes. Well, actually, I think that there's from like a creative point of view, there's lots of like nice room to like grow and expand and start thinking about like different ways to like make this happen. So in that way, to me, this is pretty good because I can really get my creative juices going and with not a lot of like restriction. But if I were to do this completely from like somebody else does the concepts and all the like the creative thinking first, then I wouldn't have so much to go on with, and I feel like there might be quite a bit of frustration in the team and within the process itself.
Yeah, I would add to that also from the concept perspective, but in general, that probably if we were for real, the explanations for the teams would be like triple, quadruple the size. And then also talk through with the team that needs to be using this to make sure that they actually understand what is written, because because if we were go off these, if you had for example, two concept artists working together, they might understand the dynamics between the let's say like the shaman, what a shaman means in completely different ways. So you would have to actually specify a lot of things, so that also using the Bible, of course, but just like adding much more to that, so that it doesn't go like way out of what the narrative designers thought. Since you want that freedom, to give that freedom, but at the same time you still had some sort of like area where you thought it would be in, and you sometimes want to keep that area. So defining kind of that area might need a bit more of work, I would say.
I
Yep.
think for
Go on,
me,
please.
I think for me, the biggest thing that's kind of missing so far is the kind of players' characters, background, and motivation, and why they are there, and what's the story behind the crash and everything else. This is more like the actual things that are happening on that planet, what the stories are involving these cultures or these factions or whatever. But at the same time, I kind of feel like I need to dig deeper into like what gets the player motivated in doing all of this. Who are they? What's their story? And that's what I will start like focusing maybe a bit more on first.
Can I
Okay.
say something?
As a writer.
Please.
Well, I didn't catch the whole course, but what is the purpose of this story? What is the destination? Or what is the final meaning of the story?
Of the task or this game?
Of the game, yes.
Oh, technically for this workshop, that's irrelevant. Like the idea was to get you focusing on this task of creating these things, and of course there were certain unknowns that I didn't want you to get bogged down in.
Okay.
All right. So we're just about finished. I'll try and get you out of here before 6. But yeah, I want to say that like all of you, your comments, your feedbacks are right. And of course they are. Well, your experiences are, true to everything that's been going on both in this workshop and what will go on in studios. But it makes me have to ask the question, how much more documentation do any of you think you need for something? To work on this, like how much more documentation would you want? You can say pages, words, wikis, meetings, like however you want to quantify it.
I wouldn't go with the term documentation. I would say how much more design work is needed to go forward. So it's not measured in kilobytes or like in words. It's more about, so for example, taking these speed basins again and interaction with them. So you sit down with your team and you decide, okay, how you can interact with speed basins. Can you touch them? Can you spit in them? Can you, like, I don't know, make a photo of them? So all of these things are possible. And of course, the more things you want to do with them, the more difficult it gets. And also it should be tied up with all the other objects in this list. So basically, all of this is a hard work, and you need to decide, okay, do we want to actually add a photography mechanic to the game or touching mechanic or whatever? Or do we not? And that's, I don't know, it could take crazy amount of time.
I feel like this would take me about 7.5 Teams meetings.
Okay.
On a Monday morning to figure this out.
Involving HR managers or not?
Yes, exactly. And then someone with bad connection.
Yes. Then
What
I
about
would say it's 7 3/4.
Yeah.
what about
7.75.
drawing boards? What about that?
Yeah, drawing boards like the mirror board we were using earlier is all possible.
Yes.
Well,
I think
Yeah.
like it would also need like deep thought in terms of like what are the core pillars of the game itself, like what are the core mechanics and stuff like that, to start figuring this out later. Like this sort of feels like to me the stuff that's important and part of the story, but it also requires a lot more in terms of the game mechanic side to understand how you can deal with all of these story elements and part of what you're discovering here, to make sure that it fits with the pillar, like the core of your game. What is the whole game about? Like how do you play it? What is the main mechanics and all that? And I would probably start like doing work on that more than even focusing on the story so far.
Yeah, I would just say that this document is extremely useful when you have the story figured out and you're about to head into the actual production. So you have these kind of items there. At that point, you're probably pretty clear on most of the questions that we had. So having this kind of document is nice, and they would probably need maybe a meeting or two to make sure that everyone is on board with what this stuff actually means. But as it is, I still find that this is an extremely useful one to have for that purpose. And by itself, it might not actually need extra documentation besides the, a bit more explanation on the team for the team members. So that's just my standpoint. Like for the sake of producing or creating a plan for producing assets that are interesting, that are tied to the story, this might be like enough. Of course, it's not like this is the game, like this is enough documentation to make a game. No, but that's not the point either, right?
correct.
It's there to do its specific job.
The question is, shouldn't be the other way around. Like, I mean, this sounds nice and interesting to kind of brainstorm all this stuff. But once your game is once you understand what mechanics are there, and if you know that you can shoot a thing, but you cannot, for example, grab a thing, right? Then probably you should basically give to your writer clear understanding of that. So you cannot grab stuff, but you can shoot stuff. And then when they build this document, then they can use this knowledge, right, to kind of be a bit more restricted, of course, so the fantasy is flying not so high, but at least everything is tied together and it's easy to create a game out of that.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, it was actually provided in the Bible, right, where we have the interaction movement and fighting mechanics. Technically, you don't stray outside of them, and that's just an example of words. They could be much more specific, right? There could be almost like a drop-down list, like for the word object, NPC and stuff, just listing the mechanics that you could have here that the narrative designer could choose. On the other hand, you could also start using this document before everything is finalized, so the writers could actually suggest something that could, in the end, become a new game mechanic that actually fits within the rest of the vision. So I see this being useful on actually multiple layers in multiple stages of the process.
Yeah, the problem is that word interaction is not actually explaining anything. You can take 2 years to create interaction for speed basins, or you can take 2 days or 2 hours. It depends a lot on what you want to do. So basically, it explains nothing about the actual costs and time spent. That's a big problem. in
But
this.
if you had another document that actually listed what an interaction means, and the team knows that this document exists before the this narrative production plan is created.
Yeah, then of course. But this is
Yeah.
not the case, right? So Greg showed us the document, said, okay, now what do we need more to create a game? And I say we need to start creating the game, basically. So it's nothing. We didn't move an inch in this direction. We just have a nice, interesting kind of narrative that can be either used or not. But yeah, this is my point.
Right, right. This is the narrative workshop. So this is, I think we're getting there. We're doing good. I actually was pretty surprised, like how much we got done, like how many items we got done, how much we thought about them, like with just these couple of simple triggers. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't want to rain on anyone's parade. I mean, this is a cool framework and I like it and I will use it for my own projects. So I think it's pretty interesting and kind of, it really helps to kind of narrow down things, but also it's not a material for kind of to continue the game. That's what the only thing I wanted to say. It's a good, let's say, starting point.
Yeah, it's not meant to be. Again, this was about production planning from a narrative perspective. So,
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all. Is there any other questions or comments you want to make before we all get out of here?
This is a workshop 1. Is there going to be a workshop 2 at some point?
That's the idea.
Yep.
I like participating in LGIN and sharing my experience and knowledge and help all of you when I can. So I would like to. If you're interested, I'm more than happy to run another workshop.
Yep.
I guess the 1 was the story hook for the workshop, right?
Yep. Next time I'm going to actually get you to build this game.
Oh my.
You're all secretly my interns.
Yeah. Do you mind if we copy the production plan?
No, not at all. Look, it's a spreadsheet, so help yourself.
If anyone feels like networking, putting down my LinkedIn name. So follow me on LinkedIn or something. Follow me on Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, if everyone here is LGIN member, we probably should do it in some more preservable channel.
Well, not everybody is actually, but yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Or Discord, or I don't know if you guys, well, I'm in the IGDA channel, of course, but something like that.
All right. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you got something out of this. And thank you again, and thank you to Suvi and Aki for your assistance. And yeah, I'm Gregory Pellechi. Hope you have a great night. Bye.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye bye, everyone.
You too.
Bye bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you.